Hey folks, Jeff Salzman here, and welcome to the Daily Evolver and to my ongoing discussion on the state of the world with Ankur Delight, the host of 10,000 Heroes podcast. And so here we are, Ankur. Say hello. Good to see you.
Hey, everybody. Hey, Jeff. So at the risk of disappointing you, this is I'm working with my own need for praise and approval here. I looked at the news this morning and I just couldn't find anything interesting. And that's,
Really?
Yeah, but I do have an idea for us. And it's kind of funny because it came from an ad. So I'm looking at this newspaper thing online and there was an ad and it was like 4 women are brave enough to confront death or retell their story about death. It was some kind of ad for like funeral planning or something, but it worked and that it engaged me more than any of the articles. And I was like, yeah, I want to talk about death.
Okay.
Yeah. And I have these 2 friends who are death doulas. Are you familiar with that concept?
I am indeed. The people that help usher you into out of this world, you might say.
Yeah, exactly. And I think there's a variety of ways that death doulas work. One of them is kind of the legal aspect, like advance directives and your will. Another one is maybe just like being at your bedside and holding your hand as you die. Another one might be just talking to you about, hey, in our society, we don't talk about death. Like, let's talk about it and go from this fantasy idea of like, well, if I'm going to die, this is what's going to happen to a real like acceptance of like, when I die, this is what's going to happen. So I just wanted to maybe get a rundown from you on the different stages, that we like to talk about here, from the purple to the red, to the traditional, to the orange, modern, to the green, and see like what is the attitude towards death in each of those stages, and what does it look like to have a teal or integral version of death? Mm-hmm. That was my concept for today.
Yeah, right on, boy. That's an easy question, huh? Well, of course, it's the death is something that is reserved to humans, at least the self-understanding of it. And that is in some ways, the thing that kicks it off human consciousness and self-consciousness, where you begin to see yourself as something unembedded in nature, something separate from nature. My dogs don't worry about death, at least not even anywhere near the way that I do, or human beings do. So human beings wake up to this idea that I'm going to die. And it's a very cruel realization, actually. And it's been a preoccupation of humans ever since. It's the existential dilemma of being human, of existence. And so, I'm not sure that it didn't come on slowly in a way. That there was, I think, in early indigenous times, the veil between eternity and one's separate self, and the eternal and just the world that is beyond. I think that veil was thinner, and we start by the first religion is basically nature religion, some sort of the nature spirits, the wind, the brother moon, that feeling of being family with nature and also being under attack. Nature is kind of brutal. And so human beings are always trying to survive it. And that's the bulk of human religion right there. And then to the degree that we develop culture and we start putting things together and seeing people die and then begin the burial rites and, tribal life where there's a real, liquid common space, then, it's something like this. It's something like the ancestors are still with us. They're still alive. And so we, have ancestor worship, if you want to call it that. Nature worship never goes away. And then we begin, to develop more complex ideas of spirits and gods, and we can name them, and we can begin to tell stories about them and explain why it is that we wake up in this world where we know we're going to die. Why is that? Is it because the she-wolf nursed us after our mother abandoned us? Or, whatever it is. There's all these stories about, if it's one way or the other, we fucked up. We've been disobedient. That really begins to form as we move into, first then we move into these sort of complex, we call this the red stage, the warrior stage, even into Greek and Roman, where gods are superheroes, basically. It's very much, you go to a Marvel or DC, comic book movie, that's what it is. These are people with superpowers. They're still very human. They're capricious. They're getting married. They're cheating on each other. They're having consequences. They're having this whole world, but it's rarefied. And it's something that we can commune with and, beg forbearance from and ask for good luck. And, that preoccupied humanity through a lot of, early complexity, if you think about, Greece and Rome and that stage. And then we move into the stage of the transcendent God, which is a way of, first of all, it allows for more complex society, which is what humans are always trying to do. And so that there's a separation between heaven and earth. And our job is to be obedient and to serve this transcendent God, or nirvana. It could be an impersonal God. It's just the emptiness, or, in the Eastern religions, it's not theistic as much as it's non-theistic, you might say. But still, if we live a good life and we conform to the rules, we'll be saved. And Ankur, it's more and more impressive to me as I read histories and cultures and memoirs and so forth, just how much that was, how that was the water people swam in, was God, meaning dripping everywhere. Everything mattered, And then we have this transcendent God who can see what you're thinking and what you're doing. You could hide from the super gods, but not the transcendent God.
That moment is from death being a punishment, in the stage before it, to God, why does this have to happen? Why did it die? What did we do wrong? To, there's a way out of the cycle. Yeah. There's a way out. Yeah. It doesn't have to be a punishment. We're going to go to heaven where there's all these cool virgins, or we're going to not have to be reborn, and we're just going to be in ultimate peace all the time. There's an opportunity that we invent for ourselves, as opposed to a punishment.
Absolutely. And I've been steeped in both the Buddhist and Christian path. I grew up Christian and did Buddhist practice for years. They're both great. They both can do the job, but they're, in a sense, no match for modernity, which is the next stage, which is where God goes away completely. And this is where the real existential dilemma that we deal with as temporary humans, where there is no afterlife. All the myths are blown out of the water, including Buddhism, actually, in terms of any kind of transcendent dimension of it. We can have Buddhism without that. We can have Christianity sort of without that.
Yeah.
But that meaning part's gone. And, therefore the meaning crisis that you hear so much about.
Yeah.
And modernity is often referred to by social scientists as the age of anxiety. And that's, that the nature of, we know we're going to die. There's that great book, The Denial of Death by Ernest Becker, how all of modernity is about building edifices to distract us from this fact.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I love that. And so let me ask another question to kind of bring that into focus from a different side. Here's the setup is that in the traditional society, we had a person who helps us interface with death. And that is the priest, right? Or the Brahmin, right? And who is that person in modernity?
Well, the hospital bed with the tubes and the monitors.
Yeah,
And
it's like
maybe
it's like the doctor with the really shitty bedside manner that doesn't want to
yeah,
talk about it. It's like a
yeah,
fully medicalized reductionist. Like that's what we got in modernity.
yeah. That's what we got in modernity. Yes. Now in post-modernity, there's a new humanization of that. And we get things like hospice, and we get the kind of realization that you and I are talking about right now, where that's just not good enough. That's sterile, materialistic death that modernity delivered to us.
It's like even though it's true, it's not good enough somehow.
Right? No, exactly. Yeah, we got to bring some humanity back to this, even if it's not religious. And green or postmodernity isn't religious; it's also as anti-religious as modernity. But at least it's sensitive. That's the sensitive self comes online, where you just don't want to see people abandoned. I mean, it's still happening. But the idea that people would die these sterile deaths is what we want to work on. That we want to do better than that. And I think we are. When I think of the hospice itself, just that the whole sort of conscious death movement, doulas. The doulas would exist now. That's a concept back from tribal.
Yeah.
And so that's, I think, forward motion, but it's not giving us meaning in the sense that what was this life about anyway? I'm glad somebody's here holding my hand, and God bless these people, because that's really super important.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens when the lights go out? We still don't really have an answer for that. So that's hard. I do think that at Integral, we begin to develop an answer for that. And that is that we're part of this evolutionary process of creating and perfecting a universe. So it turns out that everything we did does matter and did matter. And that maybe we were even in some fashion seen and loved. And that our life is a stop in our life, that there's something that is, and I don't know that this is true, Ankur. I'm just saying that evolution and this bigger cosmocentric view, where you begin to, really appreciate and feel into the fact that there's something arising out of nothing all the time, more arising out of less all the time. It's, well, what is that? Why did, atoms form themselves into us in this conversation? There's something going on here. I can't go back to any kind of mythical explanation of Jehovah or Buddha or any of that kind of stuff. I can see them as art forms. I can see them as portals. I can see all that. That's a great thing about Integral. I can see the whole bonanza as various portals. I want to do nature spirits. I want a group of elders sitting around in Grecian robes who are paying attention. They talk about me all the time, and occasionally I can check in with them and say, "What do you think?" And they can tell me. I want my ancestors to be alive, and there's a couple ancestors, my great grandmother, who I can feel her, and it's just through practice and sort of getting that Integral opens these possibilities. I can actually feel her in a way that I never thought I would again. That kind of thing. I think that's what's arising now, and that solves the meaning crisis. My life has a dignity in and of itself. It's part of a cosmic story. I'm a, infinite being. So, I hope so.
And do you, I mean, I know you just said that to me, and I know I heard it intellectually.
Yeah.
Do you feel it?
Yeah, I do. I do. And I feel it in the way of faith. I can't argue for it in any rational way because it's post-rational.
Yeah.
So it's, modernity is, I can't use modernity. And you see a lot of people who are trying to use reason and logic and so forth to justify these spiritual beliefs. I think it's a fool's errand. It disenchants the whole thing.
Yeah.
So, faith is a whole other ballgame. It's like where I don't exactly know. It's almost like I choose to have it, but then it's real. Again, that's not going to pass any test of modernity. But that's the great thing about evolution. I can see that there's stages of development beyond modernity that are real, and I actually at this point feel that modernity is kind of ridiculously arrogant to think that all of human history before them had it wrong.
Yeah,
and we're that's how crazy is that? But that's what modernity thinks. That's what I thought for most of my life, for 3 decades.
Oh yeah.
They would just say they had this delusion, they had that delusion. Religion helped because it created common bonds. Therefore, they could do this whole materialist view of history that even when I talk about it, I feel like it creates a vacuum in the center of my chakra structure that has been filled because I start taking history seriously and see that there's something yet to come. And that modernity, God bless it, it wrung out the black magic, if you will, the bad juju, and created reason and logic and this whole new world that we need. We want to keep that too, but not just that. Yeah, age of anxiety. We don't. It's funny. We're so swimming in that so basic anxiety that we don't realize it. And then, of course, when you get to green post-modernity, it's anxiety plus depression, because everything has been deconstructed, and any attempt at meaning is just ridiculous. So transcendent meaning for sure. So there you go. Welcome to this unbelievably rich and tragic human history. That all comes from this realization that somebody had when they looked at their reflection in the pool and said, I am. I am, and therefore I am vulnerable.
Yeah.
Therefore I am going to die. And that kicks off this whole cascade of human beings trying to deal with that, and still are. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I love the topic because it's just relevant to every single person alive. It's like it's inescapably relevant. And I like this progression from like the priest to the doctor to the death doula I think what I get out of what you're saying is the next level. There will still be professionals and guides that will be operating on all the different levels, but it'll be more like we'll each have that sense of meaning endogenously and won't necessarily need. It's like we can have the conviction that comes from the priest, but without the priest and the whole like complicated edifice of religion. But I think back a lot. I read Martin Luther King, some of his essays again recently, and I think it was a letter from Birmingham jail. And we may have talked about this recently, but I'm just so moved. Like Martin Luther King and Gandhi is very similar, two of my heroes. They have a very literal faith. They're not stuck in the traditional world. They're like operating very effectively in the modern world, and they have these beliefs that are way ahead of their times in terms of post-modernity, inclusion, and equality. But like he's talking about, and I think he's dead serious. He's in Birmingham jail, and he's like, this is part of God's plan, and God is going to take care of me. And that level of conviction that both of these teachers of mine, these mentors of mine had, I think it's inseparable from what they were able to do.
Yeah.
And I want to do similar things, and I do not have that.
Yeah.
Not at all. I just grew up so orange. And so to me, I'm like, oh, that's really cute, but I'm just like, I don't have access to that power, like those people have this incredible power that comes from that conviction, and there's no irony in it.
Yeah.
And
No.
I hope that in what you're talking about in the integral way, we can get back to that level of just not just intellectually knowing that we're part of this greater whole, but actually feeling it. That, on psychedelics, I've had glimpses of that feeling, but
It's like
not normal. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Yeah. No, right on. I'm with you. We probably won't, and I'm not sure either of them did, in the sense of, a fundamentalist believing that their religion is the only religion and so forth.
Yeah.
But, both of them sort of grew up in their, Martin Luther King grew up in the South and then was educated in the North. Gandhi grew up in India and then was educated, came back. So they got modernity installed, but the traditional liquid space of religion was already there too. And so they're in some ways, I think, really examples of one of the ways that we can actually, keep the religion of our childhood, if we had one, and light it up in a way where you feel God's hand, in everything. And it's some people are never going to be able to do God, and it's too loaded of a term. It's but a loving intelligence. I don't know. I don't know. I'm still working on it myself because I can't go back to my fundamentalist religion. And Buddhist doctrine, very illuminating, but I'm not going to really go there. I know people in the integral world who do. They want to work in one tradition, and they can see that there's a traditional Christianity. There's even a modern Christianity in a sense. It's the search for the historic Jesus. There's a postmodern Christianity. There's an integral Christianity. Fair enough. I'm looking personally for a new religion that just is emergence itself. It's like, fuck, this not only is the Big Bang like a jaw dropper, okay, but so is every moment, because it's still banging. It's still going forward. And there's some religion in there that, we'll find it in nature. We'll find it in the spirit world. Maybe there is this interdimensionality where they're the aliens, I don't know. But I'm where I'm at in my path. What can I tell you? But at least I'm not an atheist materialist anymore. And that's a relief.
At least I am none of my previous selves.
Yes. Isn't that a relief?
Yeah.
And then you can go back and, encounter your previous selves and see what they knew that you don't now, but you might have forgot. There's, that's the, you and I talk about the education of children. And, there's this, children are born into the magical world. They're happy to move into the mythical world. And then they, want to be good girls, you can see the trajectory the children take. And then they move into the scientific world and they take 8th grade science class and they lose all of the enchantment. That we could maybe we could do that differently, where we can keep and continue to valorize magic and just make it more sophisticated, or I don't know what, with kids, so that we don't just present them with this then scientific worldview that we think is just sort of the natural trajectory. Those of us who are modern, where we eventually lose your religion, of course. Maybe you don't. I don't know. But we would do that differently with kids.
Yeah, so I think we could do a whole other one on these different educational philosophies. I've got some friends in the unschooling movement that would be fun to talk about, and then maybe I'll catch up with them and we can go deep into that.
I'd love to. Unschooling, that rings a bell. I like the concept.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's my homework assignment. I'll try and come back to you next week with that.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
All right, man.
Thanks, Jeff.
Ankur Delight. What more needs to be said? It's a wonderful, delightful conversation, and I'm so glad we got this topic of death figured out. You know,
Yeah.
It was
We
something-
put it to, yeah, it's
something we
basically
didn't
the
do.
topic is on its deathbed. We'll put it to rest.
All right, man. Well, have a good time at the dentist, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, man.
Thanks, folks, for listening. This is Jeff Salzman signing off. See you at the next Daily Evolver.